What's up? It's Tom. It has been a while. Let's talk some baseball. Hope you and your friends and family and loved ones are all doing well. There's a lot to cover since we last talked. Not necessarily any massive news, but the Twins did make a fairly significant Major League signing recently with Victor Caratini. Should call out. They have not officially announced the deal, so we haven't really gotten the reaction or overview from, Derek Falvey, Jeremy Zoll and company. But a 2-year, $14 million deal is what it's been reported as. So, not breaking the bank for this guy or anything, but as you see there, Victor Caratini, the last 3 years has a 728 OPS that works out to a 102 OPS plus, a below average strikeout percentage. So this guy puts the ball in play quite a bit, a slightly below average walk rate though, but this guy, he doesn't chase a lot. He puts together good plate appearances and is a catcher. So that's kind of the most interesting thing here is that, the first multi-year deal the Twins are giving out this season goes to a catcher. Who would have seen that one coming? Caratini, there's not that many guys out on the market, and I would say this is, a budget signing for a solid player. So, anytime that's the case, you can see the logic there. But Ryan Jeffers is the primary starting catcher. Alex Jackson, who they traded Peyton Neals to Baltimore for, is out of options. So it's kind of looking like that was probably going to be plan A as the complementary catcher to Ryan Jeffers. So how does this situation resolve itself? Are we just going to see Jackson potentially just not make the team and go on waivers, or is something else going to happen here? Now, Caratini, he can mix in at first base. Maybe Ryan Jeffers could DH some. Alex Jackson himself has played some other positions in the past. But yeah, surprisingly, that final note, no bullpen help yet. They signed a catcher for a 2-year deal before they've gotten any help in the bullpen, really. Again, who would have seen that coming? Caratini, that deal has not been made official, so the Twins have not made roster moves yet. But there is a move coming because the 40-man roster is full right now. They don't have space to add Caratini. So sometime before that signing becomes official, they're either going to have to move somebody off the 40-man or trade somebody away off of there. Some of the fringy guys currently on the roster are Johnny Pareda is probably the guy that sticks out the most to me. He's a catcher as well. So the Twins plan on keeping Jackson around for now. He would probably be the one I would guess. Ryan Kreidler is a name that stands out to me. He's a guy who can play infield and outfield. He's played under Derek Shelton. But I don't really see, now that they've beefed up some of the other positions, which we'll get to in a second, I don't really see a whole lot of reason to keep him around. And then on the pitching side, Pearson Ole and Marco Raya, although I'm not sure the Twins, given their bullpen situation, they're probably not really in a position to be waiving any kind of pitchers at this point. But, again, the Twins could also make a trade. Obviously Trevor Larnach has been in the trade wins for a long time now, but just like this Caratini signing was a kind of a surprise move. Maybe we see a surprise move in correlation to that. Who knows? Should call out that Ryan Jeffers is on an expiring contract, so it's pretty easy to argue that trading Jeffers away could make quite a bit of sense, and just rolling with Caratini and Jackson, that's another possibility of how that catching situation could resolve itself. We'll see. Another move, the Twins acquired Eric Wagaman from the Miami Marlins for former 17th round pick Cade Bragg. Now, that doesn't really talk him up, it's being drafted that late, but I do think there's a decent chance that Cade Bragg does become a major leaguer down the road. Pretty good minor league relief pitcher. But Wagaman, a first baseman mostly, also plays outfield, but it's pretty difficult to envision him playing there with the Twins. Has also played some third base, but I think this is basically a first base DH. You can think of him as not a good season last year. He had a 674 OPS, again, as primarily a first baseman last season. On the bright side, he does have options, so it's not like he has to be wedged into the Twins opening day roster. But, if you look at his baseball savant sliders that I put there on the left, if you're trying to figure out why the Twins, what they see in him, why they would acquire him, I think that's your answer right there. Some of the under the hood stuff looks much more intriguing than his numbers. This isn't a player I would have targeted, to be honest, but again, just sort of trying to see things through the eyes of the front office. First base is not the deepest place on the roster. They do have Josh Bell there, but could do more. So Eric Wagaman, a pretty underwhelming addition, as well as these next two guys, Vidal, Bruján, and Orlando Arcia. Yes, Oswaldo Arcia's little brother. A couple infielders, a couple guys probably in competition with Ryan Kreidler, who I mentioned, for potentially the backup shortstop role. Bruján was claimed off waivers while Arcia was signed to a minor league deal. Infield depth was really thin, something I've been doing at Limestone Pipeline. The Patreon project I've been doing with Jamie Cameron is going through the entire Twins system depth. And before these additions, these aren't exciting additions either, much like Wagaman. But before these, it was like, man, Kalen Culpepper is like on the fringe of the major leagues, and it's not because he's ready. It's because the infield depth was so thin. And, it's not like these guys are going to get in the way of a guy like Kalen Culpepper if things continue to go well for him. But it definitely adds some depth there. But you see at the bottom, among the 491 hitters with 600 plate appearances since 2021, Orlando Arcia ranks 400th in OPS, and Vidal Bruján ranks 487th, one of the very, very worst players across Major League Baseball in terms of OPS. Arcia brings a little bit more to the table defensively. I think he's a little bit more of a legit shortstop than Bruján, but Bruján hasn't really got a ton of chances to play short, but that seems more to do with just the teams he's been on. There haven't been that many opportunities, but he doesn't grade out that great defensively either, and he's a terrible hitter. So, Wagaman and Bruján and Arcia, those are pretty tough sells. Caratini, though, he's a guy to definitely be excited about, especially given the Twins' payroll constraints at the moment. Speaking of which, this is a news item that really bothered me, so we'll save it for last to blow off some steam here. Joe Ryan. The Twins were not able to reach a deal with Joe Ryan, who is arbitration eligible for this next season. They filed at a number. Joe Ryan filed at a number. They were remarkably close, only $500,000 difference when baseball money, of course. We're not talking about, that's a lot of money in real life, but baseball is not real life money. $500,000 is that's below the minimum salary right now in Major League Baseball. That was the only difference between they had. Why is this a big deal? They'll file and they'll go to trial, and hey, one side is going to win. What's the big deal there? Well, basically, in a hearing, the whole point of it is that the team is going to try to present something that says Joe Ryan's not worth $6.35 million. So they're basically going to drag Joe Ryan through the mud in this trial and try to make him seem not as good as he is. These never strengthen a bond between a player and a team. I did add in there, unless there's an extension signed, then they wouldn't go to arbitration. But I think, given the reality of the situation, I don't think there's a very good potential for that to be the case. So, it's pretty annoying that Tom Pohlad comes in here and one of his first statements was, I'm a go big or go home guy. And then one of the first things we see money-wise is that he doesn't want to give another $500,000 to one of his best players. So that already just flew in his face. Pretty frustrating. Joe Ryan, one of the faces of the team right now, one of the Twins' best players, a guy that you should take care of, especially when there's that small of a difference. Pretty annoying, pretty upset about that. But again, I mentioned Limestone Pipeline. That is a Patreon project that I'm tag teaming on with Jamie Cameron. Lots of minor league coverage. He's been carrying the torch for us lately because I've been bogged down with lots of extra stuff of late, hence why there haven't been any videos on the channel. But check that out. Also, huge shout out. Thank you so much for helping me reach 8,000 subscribers. Finally, it took so long to get to that threshold after being stuck on 7,000 something for so long. So it's just nice to see when I pull up my channel and see that. I really appreciate you. We'll talk again soon.